I know we've mentioned in years past the approach that Rav Soloveitchik had towards Yom HaShoah, which is that it's technically, there is no date on the calendar called Yom HaShoah because the day of Jewish suffering throughout the ages has been commemorated on the Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av was the day that the Galus affected our people, and everything subsequent to that is an outgrowth of that. We brought a raya that approved. If you look at the keynotes we say on Tisha B'Av, remember some of the elegies, some of the keynotes are dedicated to the Halugay York, the martyrs of the town of York. We live in New York, Baruch Hashem, we live in a free country. But hundreds of years ago during the Crusades, thousands and thousands of Jews were murdered in York by the Christian crusaders. So that was an indication that on Tisha B'Av we do commemorate the loss of the Jewish communities. Even though it didn't take place literally on Tisha B'Av, it's a outgrowth of what Tisha B'Av is. So, to my mind, the idea of Holocaust Remembrance Day, whether it's Kristallnacht or Yom HaShoah, is really an ongoing theme. And every time we have the ability to recognize the theme of Zachar and recognize our part of Jewish destiny, it really is our obligation and opportunity to do so. When we have Holocaust survivors that are available to speak on their schedule, we would seize the opportunity to do so. Over Pesach, I met two incredible people. I'll tell you about them very briefly. They will be joining us a little later this morning. One is a 95-year-old Holocaust survivor that he's not that focused now, so if he does speak and he does kind of get off topic, we have to understand that and be sensitive to that. He's going to be coming with his daughter or daughter-in-law, I think. But he told me that in Auschwitz, he was one of the first Jews taken to Auschwitz in 1942 when they opened up Auschwitz-Birkenau as a killing camp. In 1941, Auschwitz was opened to kill Soviet prisoners of war. In 1942, they added on Birkenau and became the killing camp that ended up killing 1,200,000 men, women, and children. He was one of the first people in the camp, and he said he didn't have a sitter, and he would down everything Baal Peh. And he actually gave me a demonstration and started doing the Megillas Eicha Baal Peh, and he remembers a tremendous amount Baal Peh because he felt that tremendous commitment to do whatever he can as a Torah Jew, despite the horrific situation of Auschwitz. The other one is going to be an 88-year-old survivor, also from Auschwitz, and I saw them over Pesach. They were comparing, their tattoos, for lack of a better term. He had his removed after the war because he simply couldn't tolerate the idea that he's branded by the Nazis and continuing to live his life that way. Perhaps he'll pull up his sleeve and show that to us as well. Both were, I believe, in the death marches in January 1945, when the Allies were literally at the gates of Auschwitz to liberate the camp. The Nazis took everyone inside on a death march. It's obviously impossible to describe what they went through. They'll be here for 20 minutes, half an hour. We'll have a chance to ask them some questions. But understand, 20 minutes or half hour of recounting what they went through is nothing compared to the 2 to 3 years that they spent in concentration camp witnessing the worst horrors that one can imagine. What we decided to do this morning, actually before they came, I didn't want them to see this and live through the horrors of Auschwitz again. We found a little clip online on YouTube, which is a depiction of what the Allies forces found when they came to liberate concentration camps. Obviously, this is with actors. Obviously, it's nowhere as graphic as the real situation. There are some actual clips of Russians liberating Auschwitz you can find on YouTube. I saw some that are pretty gruesome. It's actual footage of what the Russian soldiers found. But nonetheless, this gives you somewhat of a flavor. There are some gruesome parts, but I do want you to realize one thing, that no matter how difficult it might be to see some of the parts, remember that it's actors. We're sitting in the comfort of our chairs, right? In New York, free people, having had breakfast. Perhaps our big decision today is what to have for lunch. And this nowhere is near the horrible experience that these people had, not for 10 minutes, but rather for 2.5 years. So I'll ask to show the video, and then we'll have some comments before the survivors come.
Right, we smelled something that wasn't in order because months before they used to deport the Ostjuden, what they called it, the immigrants that came to Germany. So there were appeals in the shuls that we should take in families that came with nothing. So I remember in my house, and in our house, there was people sleeping on floors, families, and so on. And it didn't take very long that they started with their atrocities. Krakow was a very Jewish city, also a Hasidic city. We were living in the heart of Krakow, in the heart of the Jewish quarter, which was called the Kazimierz. And we were living, our house, our building is actually the third house from the Remushul, whoever was there. And there is a little street that even takes our name. It has our name. It's called Levkova. My name is Levkovich. Levkova means Levkovich is, it's Adayom, it's there, only the street, but none of the Levkoviches. Just, I'm the only one survivor of a very large family. And the question why, there's a lot of questions, but there's no answers. So it started to become very bad. We went to, the Germans, of course, you know, they installed the capo business, capos that were supervising the workers, the Jewish workers. They also created a police, a Jewish police called Ode Ordnungsdienst. And the police, the capos were supervising the work, and the police, they were bringing the people. The Germans ordered them to bring people, so they brought the people to do the work, or for executions or whatever it was. And with the time, after certain months started to become very bad, they started to harass the Jews, cutting beards, cutting payers. I even saw a case where a German Nazi officer lighted a lighter in front of for the payers of a Yid that was screaming, yelling. But we were existing. Times were becoming very bad because there wasn't what to eat. It became very bad, and then they were talking about making a ghetto in Krakow. So my father had a mill in a shtetl called Zalishitz, about 50 kilometers away from Krakow. So we moved out of Krakow to that small place there. Zalishitz had about between 15 and 17,000 Jews, and about 1,000 non-Jews, which was actually the Shabbos Goyim cult. And there was a little bit easier because Jews were not supposed to have any property, so we had to give away the mill, flour mill, to a Goy, and he promised that he will give us a little flour. So sometimes he gave and sometimes he didn't. Seldom he gave. And once I remember a case that he gave a little flour. My mother baked bread, but there was no salt. And so what could she do? She baked the bread. But as hungry as we were, we couldn't eat that bread without salt. It was like straw. It was just not edible. And from there too, they started to take people out to work, to the fields. They took us to the fields to harvest grain. The Germans needed food, vegetables, potatoes, whatever. We worked at those fields. And one day, they decided in the middle of the day nobody works anymore, and they gathered everybody and took him to the shtetl, to Zalishitz. And there they made it a Judenrein. I was in a stable at the time, bringing in straw, like sheaves, straw, aluminum bundles. So I hid among that straw, and I did not go out when they called. And later, when it was quiet, everybody left. There was a small train that took from this place to Zalishitz. It was quiet, then I came out, it was at night, looked around, nobody was there. I went, knocked at the door, and asked for something to eat. They slammed the door on my face. I said, get away, go away from here. I went to another one. I saw it was bad. I don't have where to go, so I tried to join that. They go to that shtetl. How do I go? That little train. There was a small train. Here they call it choo-choo train. So under the hill, it was very slow. So I went and jumped on that train and came to Zalishitz. When I came to that town there, from the station, I started walking, and I saw a lot of dead people on the floors. That was the day that they made Judenrein. It was the marketplace was all illuminated. So I was walking from the station to the center of that town. The center of the town, the marketplace was all illuminated with reflectors, with big lights, and there was yelling in German, yelling, screaming that everybody has to be at 6 o'clock in the morning at the marketplace. And everybody is allowed to take 10 kilos with themselves, whatever they desire to take 10 kilos. So but I was not in my home because I was just arrived from the station. So I was walking till to an apartment of one of the cousins of our uncle, cousin of my father. And I was staying there overnight. We didn't sleep, of course. The Germans were yelling, whoever would come to a window, look out, will be shot. And so during that night, everybody was getting ready to leave the houses and to go on that marketplace where they gathered us. In the morning, we came to that marketplace. I wanted to go to find my parents because they didn't know where I was. So nobody was supposed to get up, everybody was supposed to sit. So I crawled on all four and I asked everybody about my parents. I reached my parents, and then they took us to the trains and they brought us to a shtetl, to another city called Miechov, the Yiddish Machev. And in Miechov they put all the people from Polish, about 17,000 Jews, on a big field. And that we were sitting the whole day, and the nightfall, everybody was starting to feel that it was all wet. Everybody was sitting on that field. Everybody can hear me, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So, and we started feeling that we were wet. And in the morning, everybody was sitting in like a swamp or something. What was there? There was a mill somewhere. They opened a dump, or a dam, or whatever it's called, and they flooded the place just to show us what they can. And after that, everybody had to undress, line up, men, women, children. And there was in every line, there was an SS man at the end with a whip. You didn't know what right, you didn't know what left. So my mother, my siblings were all to the right, my father and myself to the left. So they took us to Plaszow, the concentration camp, Plaszow. And there was a cemetery. Plaszow was a Jewish cemetery called Jeruzalemska, a big Jewish cemetery. So they brought in earth movers and they started to level out the cemetery. So you were in a field of bones and all kinds of things. And on that place, we started to build barracks. They had, of course, professionals, but we were the prisoners, the Jews, were the helpers. We had to carry things and do what they asked us to do. And we were sort of building that camp, the camp of Plaszow, which is a suburb of Krakow. For a while we were building this, we were doing other things. They brought people in from the people that were hiding under Christian names or whatever. When they found them, they used to bring them into Plaszow. And there were like two hills, one hill here, one hill here. In the middle there was like a valley. So they used to put them up there and machine gun them, and they fell into the valley. They used to take us there to undress those people and to bring them to bury the bodies, and also to the clothes. We had to search the clothes. The SS were in front of us. We had to search the clothes. In the clothes they were hiding all kind of whatever people could, money, bring money, jewelry, diamonds, gold, whatever. They were standing with big pails. So we worked there for months, for, I don't know, days, weeks, months. I can absolutely not, there was no account of anything. The fight was every day to survive the day, just to get a piece of something to eat, because we were hungry all the time. And so I can't remember dates, I can't remember anything. We didn't know when Shabbos was, we didn't know when Sunday was, we didn't know when Yom Tov was, we didn't know anything. After that they sent us to a town called Wieliczka in the salt mines. So we were just hacking their salt and loading it on wagons and bring it up with the elevator upstairs and unloading. And so there we were for a few months. I don't know how many, maybe 3, 4, 5 maybe. And after that they sent us to Auschwitz. And Auschwitz, they kept us for a few days, enough to mark us, but they had no room for us. I was very young, I was not even 14 years old yet. And that was probably one of the miracles for me that I survived, because in boys like that, they right away sent to Birkenau, to the extermination camp, to the gas chambers. So they sent us away, and they sent us to Mauthausen, another Gan Eden. And there were about 190 stairs from the quarries to carry rocks up on those. And I was a little boy. And a lot of people did perish because it was impossible. So in that Mauthausen, we stayed for a while, worked there, whatever we had to do. There were the crematoriums, and it was terrible camp. And then they sent us to other camps. They sent us to a place called Amstetten, where the Americans bombarded, and there was a central train, where all the trains went through. So they bombarded this place, and so they took us there to clean up the mess. As I remember little details there, that there were some tanks. Well, there was all kinds of things, but one tank was dripping. So I saw people, we had a little kele, a little called a menashka, a little kele that what we ate from it, whatever. So we went with that kele to that train, to that tank, and it was dripping in. We didn't know what it was. And then I drank it. And I fell asleep under the train. I was sleeping the whole night. It was just the spirit. It was like vodka or something. So that was a nest too that I survived, because if somebody would see this, I wouldn't have survived. Another thing is they took us to a camp called Mielitz. And they on the left hand, on the wrist, they tattooed us KL, Konzentrationslager. The minute when I passed by and I had it done by the assessment, I bit it out and spit it out and bit it out, and it was all swollen. I don't have a simon from it. But I was in a shul in New York once. I lived in Canada. Now I live in Amsterdam. Right, when I came once to New York to a shul, actually to a rabbi. And somebody came over to me and said, Shalom Aleichem. And I said, oh, where did you get, I forgot completely, where did you get that KL? He told me in minutes, oh, Mielitz, yeah, sure, of course. So anyways, there was a lot of Nissim. Every day we saw Nissim in survival. I spoke before about the Ramu in Krakow. I have to go for a second back. The Ramu shul is a small shul on the Heuvegas, it's called in Yiddish. In Afghanish, it's called Shoraka, Ulitza Shoraka. We always call the names not the same way that the Polacks call it. We always call every street we translated. For example, there's had some holy names. We never called that holy name. We always had some other names. So there was, in the back of the Ramu shul, there's a window, and in the front of the window is the Ramu Sion, the Mesivta window. And it is surrounded by a fence of iron fence. The Germans were very eager to get iron for the machine, for the war machine. So they told us to take out that fence. So we started to knock with picks, and it didn't work. So the German officer said, somebody should go bring it, send somebody to send a torch to torch it off. So he was standing there and supervising, and somebody took the torch and started to, so there was a lot of sparks from the, and as the German was looking at, a spark fell to his eye and made him blind and started screaming, yelling, and he ran away. And other young, the fence, the iron fence is there. The same thing happened in Plashev. I'm jumping a little bit. There is so much that when they destroyed the Beis HaChaim, the cemetery where they built at Plashev, there was also a very big iron fence all around, and we worked on that iron fence for quite a long time to take it apart, because the Germans needed that for the war machine, as I said. And that too was not an easy job, but we had to do it. So I'm going back to Mauthausen. From Mauthausen they sent us to a camp called Melk. The works that we did there, every time something else, but the main thing that we did work there was in the mountains. They had deposits of munitions. They produced munitions and they have it, we had to store it. So we worked there for a long time. And then sent us to Ebensee, another place, to many, many different places, many times. And every camp was worse than the other. And I don't know what I should tell you, because there is so much to talk about every little thing, and I don't want to take too much time. When we were liberated, I'll make it very short. If there was any questions, I can answer. I know there's a lot of questions. There's no too many answers. When we were liberated, I went back to Poland. I went home, thinking that there was a home. When I came back, there was no. I went up to our apartment. So the janitor that used to live in the basement was living in our apartment. It was very hot, gave me a glass of cold water, and I recognized a lot of things. And I said, I remember this, I remember this. But I had no interest in it. I came back to see if anyone of my parents, siblings, grandparents, my parents were still young, I was the oldest, uncles, and I was the only one. I'm coming back again, and nobody ever came to register to. And one day I went into on our street, and that's our name. From the back we went in. The front was where the big plaza is, where you know the recognize. But from the back we went into the house. I was about to go in there, and there was a Polish couple standing in the other gate, and they called me by the Polish name. My name is Yosef, and Polish Józek. Józek, Polish, come here. You were hesitating. You didn't want to. We heard a lot of stories that Polacks killed a lot of Jews that came back. So I was hesitating to go back. So they kneeled down and they made a cross over them and said, come. So I approached slowly and I said, what do you want? Oh, we knew your parents. They were such nice people. They helped us when we needed help. And we heard something that you recognize things in your house and they're planning something against you. You shouldn't go in. I heard this, I turned back, and that was it. I didn't go back anymore. I came again, but nothing, there was nobody back, so I started working there. I was alone, I had to do some work, I had to earn some bread. So I started working in the security forces, and I did a good job because we saved a lot of Jewish children from Polish homes. We got together about 600 children, mostly girls. We recovered in a place called Rakazbrui in the mountains, some Jewish hotel, like here the Catskills, you'll say, and we placed there the children. We had their clinics and dormitories and dining room, everything in school, even in some Zionist organizations in clandestine came in and they start helping with those children. They were interested to bring them there to school. And the official name for that was that was communism at the time. And we couldn't say anything about Jewish. We had to say we wanted to unite families that the Nazis separated. That was the official wording. And we had to go around and we had indications where we could find Jewish children. And I have to say that I was very good at it. I could recognize the Jewish child among the Polacks. It was different. It was treated different, not like their own children. And you could see the kid, the children. You can see the Jewish nose. You can smell it. It was hard to get them. They didn't want to get it back. And then I had a big problem: what to do, how to make sure that those children will go to Palestine. So I got in touch with Rav Herzog. He was the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael. And we met in Trieste. He came to Trieste. And I went to Poland to Trieste. And we met there and made a plan how to through the Bricha, to the illegal Aliyah, whatever it was called at the time, how to bring those children to Italy, to ship them to Palestine. And after a lot of work and a lot of paying off and smuggle them through borders, they came to Trieste and they were sent to Palestine, but the British didn't have them in. They had to send them to Cyprus, but they eventually ended in Israel. And so the Kitzer, it's a little overlooking the situation. And now this is about it. If you want to know something, go ahead, let me ask questions. I will try to answer if I have the answers.
Of course.
Thank you very much for listening.
Our pleasure to have Mr. McLean join us this morning.
This Korben, de beste Korben, was Polische Judentum. Alles Polische Judentum. Hitler wanted to make it in Estland, no. Belgium didn't let him. Polish made it. I survived because they had to build. It took up from 19 to 23. In fact, two of my friends that was in the building one lady. We saw what went on. It's some Duitsers nicht gefährlich. The Nazis. For us, none of them is good. Later, I have problem with my teeth. So I want to take it out. They're not like the way you know. Yeah. So another part passed by and said, to je Żyd wyrwałem mu wszystkie. You don't understand Polish, but I understand Polish. He's a Jew, you have all his teeth. It's hard to express, to tell you what we went through. Because in fact, my son said the right thing. If you're going to say something too much, they're going to believe you in me. Sometimes, you know, you lay in bed and think, how did I survive? How did I survive? But I'll tell you what. You can't say, like they have, God help me. You know, you have to take out you have to be naked, right? You shove only the wooden steps and the nitzel. And we were in school. And we were sitting there. In a yard and a half, an assessment, a yard and a half, a couple. So you can, when you went through, when they put down your number, next time, guys take him, right? They kill your gas chamber. It is a terrible thing. You want to kill them now. Why you make him down with his? In fact, a few years later, one of my friends said, Meyer, he said, Zalman, you were alive. You were alive. How could I forget? You kill him. Why you have to stay, put him down for the whole night, the next morning to kill him? It's too much to talk, but when I'm control. And if I'm going to tell more, you might they say, you don't know what he's talking about. So I'm going to stop to get with somebody else also like something. But I survived only because I was building those ships. So I needed from 19 to 23. And this was the time. And that's where I survived. But of my number, and I got the number, we were in the underground before the war, the Polacks. So when I got the number, when I got the number, I said to my older brother, I'm going to survive. Yeah, 1 week. Yaakov Leib, his name. I'm going to survive. It's written, I'm going to survive. You know why? 76 is what? 13, right? Echot. Hashem is Echot. 13. And this is high. I'm the only survivor from this town. When I got out, I said, I'm going to survive. And I did survive. And there was a Jewish song. I said, oh, if you know it, I'll survive. That's it. What can I tell you too much? Maybe somebody else will talk. Thank you for listening to listen to me.
Thank you very much.
I met my father-in-law probably around the same, close to the same age, a little older than you gentlemen. And what impressed me so much is before they left, he went from his home and to a ghetto, and they buried the candlesticks and this was the Pesach Becca. Yes. And they buried it, and a brother-in-law actually, he survived.
Sing. I want to sing. No.
He was a chazan for 40 years. You want to
Right?
sing?
Anyway, they buried candlesticks, they buried a becca, they buried some rings, and they went back after the war, and it was there. He explained to me, in a corner of the house, you leave a house always unfinished apart. You know what I'm talking about? Right? And it was, they knew where to have that and where to dig something up and to put that there. And we use it every Pesach, and we use it for all the chasanis of our family. And as a young person, this impressed me, that it's, before the war.
I'll tell you but if we survive, so I'm going to sing for you people I would like to ask you should stand up, please. Oh, the day of Bima, Nefesh Yehudi, Aliyah, Fateh Nidach, Kadima, Ayin Yatzion Tzofia, Oro Tikvateo, Tikva Shnat Alpayim, Liot Am Choshi, Be'yatzenu, Be'eretz Tzion Yerushalayim. Liot Am Choshi, Be'yatzenu, Be'eretz Tzion Yerushalayim.
Mr. Lefkowitz wants to add a few words.
I just want everyone to imagine for a moment how life was impossible. For example, as Mr. Mitgang mentioned, all you had is that striped jacket, pair of pants, wooden shoes, and a little round cap. Can you imagine standing in winter on the a frosty day, on a field, building the tracks for the train, putting gravel, putting those wooden, whatever, yeah, standing there, working in that sub-zero temperature, freezing, shivering, working, being beaten up, surviving, that is not imaginable. Or, on a hot day, June, July, August, the sun was baking you, not burning on you, baking you. Dying for a drink of water, not having a drink of water. I remember we were once walking to work to a place where there are little apples on the floor, falling down on the road. So I went once to pick up that little apple, maybe it was bitter or sour, who cares, just to have something. So I got from the assessment, with the rifle, that's in the back. To survive that it's just not, it's unimaginable. Sometimes I heard, and I spoke to Gentiles, to Goyim. They said, how could it be 6 million Jews? How could you imagine, put up 6 million people, it will be like from here to Moscow. 6 million people, how is it possible? They are honest people, honest Goyim, honest people, they are not anti-Semite. But they cannot imagine 6 million people, how, why? So sometimes when you hear from some people that they are not anti-Semites, but they just wonder, is it possible? Sometimes we also feel, did I dream? I remember certain scenes that come back. And I think that maybe I dream about it. No, I don't dream, that was true. And if you tell it, like Mr. Metcalf said, if you tell too much, they won't believe you either. Because it's in our times, under normal circumstances, I hope Hallelujah it should continue normal. The way the world looks today, we are not in very good shape. Everybody's against us. The whole European nations that were bad always are still bad. And then we have new Sodom every time popping up. So, but just a normal mind cannot believe, cannot imagine what has happened. We could talk for a year and we won't finish. But I just wanted to say what I remember every time pops in something else. If there was any questions, if I can answer, if anybody has anything to ask, please.
We have time for a couple questions. Don't be shy now. It's very historic time for you guys. Any questions you want to ask? Someone should start. Cody.
Is there anything that got you through the war? Anything that you thought of that gave you the strength to continue?
That is a very good question, and I'll try to answer it. I was brought up a believer, and I believe that there's a God, because nothing is being done by itself. All the beauty that we see in the world today, or we saw before, it's the other Shem. It's always God, everything. Now, I want to answer it with this. A lot of people that survived, unfortunately, Polish Judaism, well, I don't have statistics, but I think less than 1% of Polish Judaism. Can you imagine? There was 3.5 to 4 million Jews, and we're talking about not even 1% survived. So some of the survivors, when they survived, they said they don't want to know anything. They don't believe in it. Something like this could happen, we don't believe in it. I had always debate with those people. That will answer your question. And I said, who created the world? Who is running the show? Who is the Holocaust? Who made the Holocaust? Who brought the Malchamovas like Hitler and Machshemite? Who brought him from nowhere? From nowhere he came. It was a big demagogue. And it took a nation of 100 million people, and they were all with him. And he did, Malchamovas did the job, a terrible job. Liquidated, murdered a third of our people, and disappeared. We didn't even know where he disappeared. The ruins and the boom. Malchamovas, the Rebbeinu Shalom sent around Malchamovas to do the job. Why? No answer. Questions? A lot. What kept me alive? Believing that the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the show. He is the Balabos. He is everything. And we were struggling every day, struggling. Surviving a day wasn't, every day was, you saw death. Every day, beating. I was a few times there. It's not the time to talk about it, but every single time there's a big story. Baruch Hashem, I'm here to tell the story. And we believe, and I believe that as bitter and as hard and as difficult as it is, lost everybody. I'm the only one survivor from a lot of people. Not a single one, not an older person should tell me who I am, where I come from. Tell me my history a little bit. I was very young. Mr. Mitgang was a little older, so he knows more. I came once to Israel in the 50s. So somebody came to me over and he said, Mr. Lefkovich, come with me, make an haskara. There's an haskara here. So I went to that haskara. And people were talking, who's he? I was a stranger, I was living in Argentina at the time. So they were talking. So an old man, two came inside. Said, you are Simcha's son? My father said. I said, yes. I was at your bris. Tell me something. Do you know after you are named? You're Yosele. I said, yeah, Yosele. You were named after a great-grandfather, there's Rebbe Rabbi Yoskale. I said, what is Rebbe Rabbi Yoskale? There was a Rebbe in Poland that a big Talmud Chochem, about Moifes. There was a book that was written up, people used to tell about him. In olden times, they were not writing books. Today, everybody has a hand that writes books, you know. But no. So I knew something a little bit, and then I found people sent me some books, some pages that people talked about at Rabbi Yoskale. I came to a Rabbi Bobov to the Bobov, so he knew about it. There was no older person that should tell me something about my family, about everything. And life was not easy. When I survived, I mentioned it, the rabbi, I had a tiny to the venture. Why me? Why did you leave me? You took away everybody, left me alone here. I have to mourn and cry on all those people. Why? But there was a purpose. The venture has its goodbyness, and there was a good purpose in Baruch Hashem. I was happy to be alive and to bring up a nice family and have nachas from them and yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Now,
going through the Holocaust as a Jew and being tortured as a Jew, how does it make you feel being able to watch the Jewish people get Eretz Yisrael and form a Jewish army?
so we all the Jewish people have that question, and we have the answer that after that big Holocaust, that big home, we have a compensation in a small form, a compensation. He has, with one hand he slaps you, for what reason we don't know, and on the other hand he loves us, and he gives us a home. For those broken people, some broken people that survived, came to that Eretz Yisrael and started new lives and built new families and they're flourishing, Baruch Hashem. So the Rabban Shalom gave us something for the home. It's not a total Yeshua yet. We are waiting for the total redemption of the Jewish people. When we talk Rishon Abu Yerushalayim, we mean a different Yerushalayim. You know, we mean the Yerushalayim, spiritual Yerushalayim, that we should be liberated, we shouldn't be in fear. We are in fear every day. You can see in the papers, every day there is something in Yerushalayim. They're living with us, you know, and you know, why it says Tov Shuchen Kulev. It is better a Shuchen than a neighbor than a relative. So there's a big question, why is it better a relative is something that your blood and everything. My answer, and I'll give you, I'm not a big Talmud Chochem, I didn't have when to learn, but my answer is to it, If you have a good relative, you're very close with him. If you have a bad habit, bad relative, you stay with him. You have no business with him. A shocking, you're stuck with him day and night. So in Eretz Yisrael, for example, we are not moving out. They are not moving out. So we're stuck with them. Any other question? Go ahead.
What did you do after you worked in the security forces?
I beg pardon?
Where did you go and what did you do after you worked at security?
Okay.
Service?
And that's not the first job that I got. After the war, I was working for the Allied forces in Germany. I knew the language. You know that in Krakow, the rabbi comes also from the Krakow area. In Krakow, our second language was German because Krakow was Galicia and it once belonged to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So I knew German. So I was working for the Allied forces to hunt Nazis. And Baruch Hashem, whoever saw Schindler's List, that movie, there is Amon Get was the commandant of Plashev. He was hiding between 30,000 regular Wehrmacht soldiers in a camp of prisoners of war called Landsberg in Austria, near Linz, as hiding among regular soldiers. I went to that camp for weeks. And I discovered that bandit, that murderer. And when I saw him, it was hard to recognize him. He was slim. He had he was very big, a big man. He had a jacket, sleeves till here, pants till a little bit down the knees, slim. And when I saw him, I started beating and kicking and punching, whatever I can do. This man almost shot me. And that's another, I don't want to go into it. And I asked him, why did you hang Mr. Kenner? There was a Mr. Kenner came in, had something in his under his coat, some Polak gave him something. So they found that he brought in something like a piece of chicken or something. They hanged him for that. They asked the whole camp to come out on the Appellplatz to watch how they hang him. And it happens there something very spectacular, that the gallow broke and he fell on the floor. That bandit took out his gun. There's an international law, I didn't know of it, but then I heard that if the gallow or the cord breaks, the person is saved. You don't. He took out his revolver and gave him knocked in a few shots to him, killed him. Why did you kill Mr. Kanner with broken? Wouldn't open his mouth. Why did you take Mr. Spielman? He was in our row. Why did you take out Mr. Spielman? And I remember the words that you said, that you cannot, anyway, I cannot take it that the Jew should look so handsome. And you shot him. Why did you do this? Why did you? Many other things. The man who didn't, the Chai, I said, the man I should call him, didn't open his mouth. He wouldn't say a word. Anyways, I visited him twice in his cell. I got a little bit reprimanded because you're not allowed to hit. I said, who cares? You know what? I'm quitting. I'm not working on that. Bye. And I had another one, Julius Ludolf, that was the commandant in Melk. I brought him to the... I have all those pictures now to school. I'm gathering a lot of things to give to Yad Vashem. I also met Oskar Schindler after the war because he was afraid that they were going to bring him to court, to judge him. So I said, I know a lot about you, and don't worry. You were not a tzaddik. You took away all the people, the money, but if you wouldn't have taken away, the Germans would have taken away. doesn't matter. But you didn't kill, you didn't beat, you were not, okay. So, oh, you're so nice, you're so nice. I brought him into a DP camp, and I gave him a kosher meal, and all the people knew about him, heard about him. So he said, if you love me, give me a bottle of schnapps, I'm dying. He was sure. So it wasn't so easy, but I went and I bought him somewhere on the black market, the white market, whatever it was. I bought him, I remember, a bottle of Kimmel liquor. He didn't know how to, so I had a portrait, a picture. So he gave me the picture and said, to my dear friend Lefkowitz, for ewige Erinnerung, for always to remember Oskar Schindler. It was in Bad Ischl. It was Bad Ischl where there's a DP camp, DP camp, where Bad Ischl was in Austria, where King Franz Josef had there a palace, a summer palace. It was a very nice time. So, so he gave me that portrait, and I was already ready to go to Argentina after that, because somebody in Argentina was looking for the names of my whole family. How did I know about Argentina? When I was a little boy, I saw letters coming, and I liked the stamps, the post stamps. And I said, whenever a letter comes from Argentina, where was Argentina, who knows what. So I collected stamps. After the war, I saw on the International Red Cross that somebody in Argentina was looking, my father, my Zayden, the whole family. So I answered the call, and they sent me a ship's card. A ship's card means a ticket to go by boat. I didn't have a passport. I didn't have anything. So I met somebody who said, you will go to France, to a place. Yeah. First I had like a Stadtlose, like a travel document. But that wasn't enough to go to Argentina. So I went with that paper in Vienna to the Argentinian consul, and they said I have a card to go by boat to Argentina, give me a visa. So he looked at my paper. He gave me a form to fill out. I filled out the form. So he said, you know what, take out Jewish, put Christian, and give you a visa. I was very angered. And I said, I survived the concentration camp, the whole war, because I'm Jewish. Now that I'm a free man, you are going to tell me now to put Christian? Are you crazy? He said, I can't give you a visa. That was Vienna. I had to go to Le Havre in France to take a boat to go to Argentina. So I went to, before that I went to München again, before I went to Paris. And I went to the Argentinian consul, I had the same story there. So I came to Paris, and I met somebody who said, you have to make a passport. So where can I make a passport? Go to Toulouse. Toulouse, there, the consul, the Polish consul, is a good friend of mine. I go there, and he will give you a passport, tell him I sent it. I came there, he gave me a passport. And I went to the Argentinian consul in Paris, the same story. Take out Jews. They had a directive or something not to give Jews visas. Nazis, they gave visas, but not Jews. So anyways, cannot get a visa. Where do I go? I went to the, I found an idea, go to the Brazilian consulate. I said, I'm going to Argentina, but I want to go to Brazil. Can you give me a transit visa? I said, yeah. Give me a transit visa, I came to Brazil. And you were hard like hell. A language that... Anyways, I had to stay there for about 6-7 months, learn the language, start working, read. Anyways, from there I wandered until I came to Argentina. And that's, any other question? Yeah.
Yeah, at what age did the Nazis start taking over your community?
I beg pardon?
What age did the Nazis take over your community?
When the Nazis took
How old were
over
you?
Poland
Yeah, how old were you?
in 1939 in September.
How old were you?
I beg pardon?
How old were you?
13 years.
13? So you had a bar mitzvah by then?
So sort of, not like what it is today. A little. My father had a small little special, a little bottle of vodka in his pocket, and in the other pocket he had a little piece of laker, what it's called, a little sponge cake, and that was like because the Nazis would see if there would be problem. Yeah.
When the Nazis started to like do everything
What?
to
I can't hear.
when the Nazis started to do anything during to the Jewish communities, did your family ever consider leaving like earlier on?
Did your family think about leaving when the Nazis started trouble?
We were so rooted in Poland for generations, so maybe more than 1,000 years. Everybody has their families there, and everybody has their some parnose, some didn't have. There was no wealth in Poland. The Jews mostly struggled. The Jews struggled from Sunday to make Shabbos. The whole week they had to be careful what they eat just to be able to make Shabbos. Now, about leaving. There was some people that were making propaganda to go to Eretz Yisrael. Now, to go to Eretz Yisrael was not easy. Number one, I think that was about $500 a certificate. $500, not many people, very few people had $500. That was about 2,500 zlotys, I think. Yeah, Mr. Ritke? About five zlotys a dollar. Okay. So not so many people had that money. Number two, not easy. It was very not easy to get a certificate to go to Eretz Yisrael.
I don't know what to know. I'm not. You might
Yeah. Well, so it wasn't easy. And besides, I was talking that I'm a believer, and Jews went to the rabbis. You know, there was in Poland, there was a lot of Hasidus. So every Hasidus went to their Rebbe, the Hasidim, to their Rebbe. Rebbe, should I go to Eretz Yisrael? So the Rebbes, the Rabbanu Shalom, blinded the Rebbes. That's my explanation to it. They didn't see anything. They didn't see what can happen. So they say, Poilon. Poland in Yiddish is called Poland is called Poland. So they interpret Poilon, stay here, don't go. If the Rebbes, there was one exception, the Gerel Rebbe was encouraging people to go. And that's why they are very big in Eretz Yisrael. And I think the Gerel Rebbe is probably the wealthiest person in Eretz Yisrael today. They're billionaires in Eretz Yisrael. But I think that the Gerel Rebbe is one of. So we thought it wasn't easy. People were trying to go to Switzerland, to go to they didn't let them in. When it was already bad, they didn't let in nobody. You know the stories that America, the Golden America, sent back to St. Louis, and it was sung. Other countries, they had to bribe Cuba, they had to bribe Haiti, little countries there, Puerto Rico, some little countries, they had to bribe, they came in there and they gave them at the border all the possessions and paid money to let them in. Most of them didn't let in. We had this rules. Some rabbis came to my wife at the time and they said, we would like you to make, my wife used to make a lot of those receptions and things. We like you to make a reception for the Consul of Japan that saved so many Jews. So many rabbis from America and from Canada, maybe 50 of them came to the house, and that consul came, he spoke a very bad English, and he said, so there was one that held all the passport, and he stepped them. Yankul Edelman, that was the man. he had about a few hundred passports, and he stamped them, and the consul signed them. So the consul was telling the story how he's proud what he did, and he was from the royal family, and they excommunicated him. But he said, I'm so happy to be excommunicated for what I was doing. So, any other question fast?
We have time for one or two more questions.
Okay.
Okay.
What was school like for you?
What?
What was school like for you? Like before,
The school like this.
I went to school in a little shtetl called Zalmushitz, I mentioned before, for a very short while, and my maternal parents were living in Krakow, and they brought me to Krakow to them. I was the first grandson, and there was a better education in Krakow, but it didn't last long. It was interrupted once from the Zalmushitz, and then they want to interrupt it. The schooling for me was the first time I go to school is now. I go to Ulpan to school because I need a language. So I went in the school of life. I went to many schools of life in many countries, for business and otherwise. But Baruch Hashem, now I ended up at home in Eretz Yisrael.
One more question. By resistance.
Different survivors have views. Different survivors have views if they should take compensation from the Germans or reparations. I would like to know what your opinion is.
Now I have to tell you. I won't get out of here. You know what? Your question is a very valid question. Now let me tell you the question. Answer the question. In the early 1950s, I was very active in the Jewish community in Argentina, first Bnei Akiva president, then Mizrahi, Apollo Mizrahi. I was in the Daya member, but they bombarded, you know, now that we know that the Iranians were behind that in Argentina. So one day we had a telegram that Menachem Begin is coming for the first time to talk in Argentina, Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires had at the time 500,000 Jews. It was an enormous community after the war. Since I was active in many ways, and also in politics a little bit, even in the Peronist party because it was convenient. So I went to receive Menachem Begin. He wasn't known yet, he was just known to be a terrorist by the British. That was what he was known. But he came to speak. So I went to receive him, and now we can talk about it. He was dressed very poorly. He was supposed to address a crowd of 150, 180,000 people in the Luna Park in Buenos Aires, which was something enormous. He wasn't dressed properly, we had to dress him, and he didn't want, and this and that, I don't have money. Anyway, we dressed him up. He looked like a real diplomat when he stood up to talk. And I became very, very close with him. We spent every day with him while he was there. And he wanted to know about me. He told me about him and Jabotinsky and Trumpeldorf and all the gang. And he was a very nice man, and he was a traditional man. I cannot say I'm a deep religious man, but he was religious too. When he took a drink of water, he would put the handkerchief and said, bracha. He was nice. And I told him my history, that I have survived, and I want to take compensations from the Germans. So he said, Chas v'cholila, don't sell your parents' blood for a few dollars. Don't do it. So since I held of him a lot at the time, so I didn't do it. And I was personally involved in Argentina to get from the Germans the compensation for so many people. I was in a committee where we worked to get the money. So he said no, so I didn't. I didn't take any money, and I regret it later because I saw that Israel took a lot of billions from Germany in raw materials that created jobs, and it helped a lot the economy of the country. But when I wanted to go back and take it, it was too late. The term, they had a interesting expression, the term expired, something. I don't remember exactly. So I didn't take. And that was a big mistake. Why? In Yiddish they say it's a mitzvah, chazar ahu Österreichen. It's a mitzvah from the Germans. I didn't do any. But I listened to Menachem Begin, and he was a very good friend, even when he was Prime Minister. I called him and Prime Minister, oh, Yossi, come up, we'll open a bottle of caramel wine. I said, Rosh Menshalah, you don't have any other business. No, come up, we'll drink l'chaim. He was a very, very nice man. From all the Prime Ministers, I'm telling you, he was one of the nicest. So I listened to him and I lost. Baruch Hashem, the Rabboni Shalom has many ways how to give. So I lost there, I got somewhere else. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have Kel Mole, Mr. Mitgang, Chazan Mitgang, to say Kel Mole for the Rabboni Shalom.
Shochem Ganerom Amatzei Menucha Chayno Akanfe Ashchino Harois Kedoshim Utor Reim Tezara Mazhelim es nishmois Hagdoshim Vatahorem Shimsu Shneharvu Shnishkatu Shnesivu Shnitbu Shnachnaku Akil Sheshem Be'Auschwitz Adonai Atzorim Baruch, Korinith, das Ding, was will ich sagen? Begann Eden, Kein Chusom, Lochei Balo Lachamim, Yastirei, Beseser, Knevelioy, Lamim, V'yitzel Zorachim, V'shmesem, Adonai, Ho Nacha Lotzam, V'yelchu V'shulayim, Aham Shkosehem, V'noimah,
I will ask the family to join us over here. It's a pleasure to have you come. Just come on. I want to see, this is the Dardaros, okay, that you helped establish. Okay, it was because of their commitment, their emunah, that are with us today. We really thank you for joining us this morning. It's tremendous good to have you, and the legacy that you established, your inspiration continues to inspire our young adults for hopefully many, many, many years.